You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 266, When to Feel Your Feelings and When to Shift Your Perspective with Dana Evans. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, Breakup Coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, beautiful brave hearts. How is everyone doing today? I am so excited. I have Dana Evans, one of my favorite human beings on the podcast today with us. And I think I've had Dana on before. I don't remember for what. I'm sure it was probably feelings based. But I've been working with Dana and have known Dana for what feels like forever now, but definitely since 2021 or 2020. But I met her through another program. You had done inner voice facilitator training with Bella Lively. I was going through it. Then I asked her to come in. Oh, you did a workshop. I forgot all about this. She did a workshop on like how to make decisions with your inner voice. And like that was like my jam. I was trying to figure that out. And then I asked her to come in and present to the Get Over Your Ex program what she taught in that workshop to the program. And then it was really just a slippery slope from there. I saw her in a different program and I was like, I'm now following you, stalking you. Like, I want to be in that program because Dana Evans is in this program. I'm supposed to be a part of this program. So then I was a part of Projector Playground with her. And then I started hiring her as my personal coach. She's been my personal coach on and off for like the last, what, like 3 years. So,
Mhm.
so that's been fun too. And she's also she's a integral part of the Get Over Your Ex program. She comes in monthly and does emotional clearing for my brave hearts. So I, all of that to say, I love you, Dana. Thank you so much for coming on and talking more about feelings with us today. I'm really excited about our topic. We're going to talk about what's the difference between, when to feel your feelings and when to shift your perspective, because I think one of the biggest things that I get asked is, am I supposed to feel my feelings here, or can we start working on shifting our perspective? And I feel like I have my own answer to that, but I would love for you to dive into that. Before we do dive into the topic, though, please share with us who you are, where you are, what you do.
Awesome. Hello. I'm so happy to be back. Yeah, Dorothy, we have known each other for a while, and it feels like even longer because I feel like when we're this intimate, when we know each other on such a deep level and we're in programs together and we're working together in different capacities, it definitely accelerates the knowing. So it does feel longer. And I'm just so grateful that I get to know you and be with you. And I credit you actually for naming me an emotional feeling and clearing coach because I do a lot of work with inner voice, right? Which is how we originally got to know each other. And I love the inner voice work, but I was struggling hard to identify and explain what I do when we're talking about inner voice. Like people who are in your program, people who are in my world, we understand it, but it was a very hard thing to market and to talk about. And then Dorothy comes around, she says, I just call you my emotional clearing coach. It's like, what? It was the biggest light bulb moment. So, yes, I am an emotional feeling and clearing coach. And I specialize in helping you take your emotional baggage, whether it's conscious or unconscious, and literally lighten the load through physically processing the emotions through the body and anchoring you back into the physical world because emotions can feel very ethereal, they can feel very intangible. And that's difficult. It's difficult for us to conceptualize something that feels so hard to grasp. So I love to help people anchor the emotions in the body and make them feel more tangible. So we're not just like thinking about feelings, we're feeling feelings. And there's a big difference. And a lot of the world talks about, we spend a lot of time thinking about feelings, which actually is a great way to avoid feelings. And I'm like, let's stop thinking so much about them and let's start feeling them in the body because that's where they live, that's where we process them, and that's where we actually release them. So I do that through one-to-one coaching. I do that through programs, my audio program, which is coming up, and through my podcast, the Tuning In podcast. So that's an overview of my work. And at the end of the day, what I love about the emotional realm and the emotional work is that it is our pathway into our inner voice. So we start with the mind, right? And the mind wants tangible things, it wants answers, it wants right and wrong, it wants clarity. And so much of those answers are within the inner voice within ourselves, but the in between are our emotions. And so our emotions can often block the receiving of clarity from the inner voice. And so I like to work in the emotional realm because as you clear those emotions, you actually get deeper and deeper access into yourself, into your truth, and into your own inner knowing. So it's a really beautiful pathway where we work from mind through the body into the emotions and ultimately are getting to clarity of the inner voice.
So good. I love it. Ah, that was a great, accurate representation of what she does, you guys. And I just love it too because of the progression of, I remember like if you would have tried to explain that 2 or 3 years ago, I think it would have come out different. Um, and I have to say that if breakup coaching ever decides to like not be my niche, I feel like I love marketing. Like I feel like I can see a coach or I can see someone and I can be like, here's what you do from the outside looking in and make it very simple, very cohesive and like straightforward. And I love doing that. So
You're
I
so
remember
good at that.
I love it. It's
Yeah.
so fun to me. Like I'm like anyone who has a business that wants help with that, please just DM me because it is like one of my like most fun favorite things to do of like what is it that you're doing and here's how we can package it up because oh, it's fun.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love, okay, so Dana started talking about inner voice. I just want to like back up 2 steps quick and remind people what inner voice is. So, we're talking about the mind. So, if you are new to the podcast, welcome to the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. We talk a lot about thought work, is what it's kind of called or pegged as in the coaching realm. But I teach you how to get over your ex in 3 months or less. And a lot of it has to come down to what are the stories in your mind that are compounding your pain and making, adding undue suffering to your breakup journey that's holding you back from fully releasing and, going out and building your bigger and better life. We talk about reducing desire and attachment and how to do that by changing your thoughts. So, I love the mind. I love problem solving with the mind. I'm very much mindy. I love it. It feels like a game. I'm obsessed with it and I love helping other people use the mind to make decisions and to problem solve and to do all these things. However, the inner voice is a fun, beautiful tool that is also it brings you into your authentic self. It's amazing. So when we're saying inner voice, what we're actually talking about is your intuition, your inner being, your soul. I like to use the word my inner alien, right? It's all knowing. It's has all kinds of unlimited wisdom. It's lived multiple lives and the soul dropped into this human body that has a mind. And so the soul is living with this body and it's living with this mind. And the mind can sometimes get in the way of the inner voice and us hearing our intuition because it's got so many stories and loves to take care of us at a primitive level. So I am just so, so excited to talk with Dana today because when it comes to feeling feelings, we do a lot of work around this when you're going through a breakup. You're struggling with grief, loss, sadness, betrayal, anger, resentment. We've got all kinds of emotion that we get to move through. So Dana sees this every month with the people inside of the program. And she's has a lot of experience with helping them move through all these different types of emotions. So, can we address the first question of, when someone comes to you and they're like, Dana, do I need to feel my feelings around this? Or should can I just change my perspective about this? Can I change my thoughts to create a different feeling? What is your answer to this question?
Okay, so it's twofold. I think the longer you work with the mind, the more you see that the mind is limited. So we can do a lot with perspective shift. We can do a lot with reframing. We can do so much by checking the mind. And it is so conditioned and it has so many collective beliefs built in that sometimes it can feel like herding cats or wrangling a wild horse because, or gosh, I could do so many metaphors. I'm in the desert and it's like all these weeds are the second you get water, it's raining right now. It's like all these weeds are pop up. So it's like you're trying to keep up with all of the conditioning that has been placed upon the mind. So we can always approach it from a mind level, and there's always going to be value there. And the coolest thing is that when you're able to also approach it from an emotional level, you often get mindset shifts that click into place without the effort of corralling the mind. So the mind has to be on board. We have to work with the mind. We live in this body, we have this mind, we have to work with the mind. And sometimes the easiest way to get the mind on board is by shifting at an emotional level.
I love that. So good. So I kind of want to give you some scenarios. Can we talk through some scenarios?
This is why I feel like this is like a game show, and I feel like I'm going to hold up a card that says, this is let it go into the mind or go into the emotion.
So good. And you guys, this is actually really fun. So I don't know, maybe I'll post this video with the podcast because sometimes we can do that. So if we can, I will because we found this thing on Zoom called immersion gallery or something where it looks like, and I think this comes out in November, so it's like perfect. But we have like scenery around us. It looks like we're sitting at a table with coffee cups and there's a fire behind us and like beautiful leaves. And we just found this today and it's funny. It's like, that's how we're
It's
recording it.
it's really fun.
Okay, I love this. This is so good. Okay, so someone comes to you and they're like, I was majorly triggered today. Okay.
Mhm.
I, I got a text from my ex and I found out he's dating somebody new. And he started dating this person a month after we broke up. Do you feel feelings or do you change your perspective?
Um, let's do I think this one is going to be a good one for feelings.
Okay. Yeah, feel feelings.
And you
And
want to know why?
tell me.
Because you use the word triggered.
Okay. Yeah. hmm
So if you're triggered by something, to me, that is an indicator, because it is an indicator that you have some unprocessed emotion around it. Because Dorothy could have gotten the same text from the same ex as I did, and she could have been completely unfazed by it. And it could have sent me down a spiral. So to me, that means if you're triggered by something, you take that and say, if someone else was in my exact same shoes, could they have a different experience and reaction? And if so, that's an indicator of, okay, this is something within me that is charged that needs to be released.
Okay. I love that. So what if, follow-up question to this is what if, so then I'm like, okay, cool, I'll feel my feelings, but how long should I feel my feelings for that? Like at what point can I move into changing my perspective about it?
Oh, okay. So first, we want to see like how intense the trigger is, because a trigger like that might have a lot of roots. It might run really deep. So if it's really intense and you can't even look at something else from your ex without it completely overtaking you, then I would spend some focused time getting into the emotion, getting comfortable with the emotion, and actually allowing it to be. So the thing with triggers is they're showing up because every time they start to arise, we push them down. And so they never actually get to come out and be seen. So if it's really intense, we want to start with actually spending some quality time with the emotion and with the trigger before even trying to change it. In the meantime, that does not mean you can't corral your mind. So in the meantime, you might say, okay, we could do some thought work. Like, what is it about this experience that is causing me to be triggered? What am I thinking about this? What am I making it mean? So we get to approach it on the dual level. In this situation, if you only do the mind and you only do the reframe, it will probably help until it comes up again. So it will temporarily, like you could probably talk yourself down, which is great. You can talk yourself down, but then the next time it happens, it's going to come up again and it's going to take you out of alignment again.
Hence why we want to really like deep dive into feeling the feelings and allow ourselves to process that emotion through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Love it. Okay, so scenario number two that I'm thinking of, I just had a client, her breakup happened like 6 or 7 months ago, but her husband had an affair with her best friend and then left her for the best friend. And now she's moving out and doing all of, trying to figure out life after that. Um, she feels like the biggest thing that is coming up is anger and resentment, which like, of course, like the injustice feeling of it, right? I talk about this concept of, breakup police. Like it sucks that we don't have breakup police out there that are just going around writing tickets for right and wrong. Like this person did this, that was clearly in the wrong. You get a ticket and now you're fined and you should pay that ticket. And the world needs to know that you have this on your record. You know what I mean? And so there's like this unjust feeling. Is that something that you think she should feel her feelings about or reframe? And I guess there's this third option that you introduced in the last scenario, like, can we do both together?
I'm guessing I would be really curious to know what her relationship with anger is because I think there's a lot of reframing that could be done there, especially this far down the line. But when you brought up anger, it really makes me wonder how that is expressing in her system, what happens when it comes up, because anger, unprocessed, shows up as passive aggressiveness, pettiness, resentment. It shows off as like a chip on your shoulder, bitterness, like things we don't really want. Those to me are signs of unprocessed anger. But when we have healthy anger processing tools, when we're able to process anger healthily, like she could have a fit of rage, she can press against the wall, she can really express the anger within her body and get that out, allow that to start to be felt. And then on the other side of the anger, I promise there's calm clarity. Anger is so scary for people because it's like, I'm afraid it's going to overtake me. I'm afraid I'm going to like have a fit of a rage and like Beyonce, like go breaking car windshields, right? And just lose it. But actually, in a healthy anger processing environment, when we're really anchoring into the anger in the body and moving that out physically, it's very physical, very physical. Instead of trying to control it, calm it, and soothe it, on the other side of that intense expression is calm clarity. And at that place, like, I don't think she needs to spend weeks working on anger. I think she could spend 20 minutes in an anger processing experience. And then from that place, it's like, okay, I got the anger out. I got that out of my system, that rage. It feels really good, by the way, to move rage out. And then she can say, what am I still doing here? Like, where is my mind stuck? I just keep putting the same 90s rap CD in my car. And it's like, don't I have other CDs that I could play? Like, or she's probably playing the same Taylor Swift CD, right? Like, and now we got Bad Blood, right? That's the song that's playing. And it's like, what other songs do you have available to you? Like, what is going to feel better as a song? What thoughts are going to feel better? Like, this is over and done. And let's move on. Then she gets to continue working with her anger, but it doesn't have to be in relation to that person.
I love that. And you saying that reminds me of like sometimes, I mean, in my own journey and then also in my clients' journeys, what I find is you almost get to this place where you're like sick of yourself and you're sick of the, like, I don't know how else to put it other than like okay, I have an attitude and I'm like sick of the attitude. Like at
I,
one point I liked the attitude and it was like working for me and it's okay. And now I'm like, this is just like a bad attitude that I'm so sick of. Can we like vomit it up and like throw it away and call it a day? And I feel like that's kind of what you're saying, or like a theme that I'm seeing is when you fully process the emotion, that attitude is like you've gotten to your end point with the attitude and you're ready for something new.
it's really good. It's really good to get fed up with yourself
Yeah.
because when you're fed up with yourself, you actually see yourself almost from that third perspective of, all right, I was in my feels, I was wallowing, I was in whatever. And now, how much am I just hanging on to the old stories because it's more comfortable to be in that wallowing, to be in that discomfort than it is to just truly release it and it's like a little tap on the butt. It's like, okay, come on, out of the nest, right? It's like we know you're comfortable here. And that's the thing with I love this topic because a lot of us can actually get stuck in the feelings. And that's the biggest thing people come to me with. They're like, I don't want to go into the feelings because I'm afraid they're going to overcome me and I'm going to get stuck in them. If you're doing actual emotional release, you're not going to get stuck in the feelings. They're going to move through relatively quickly. But the emotional state of wallowing, of self pity, of perpetual bitterness, it's like the person who goes through a really bad breakup and now she's bitter at all men. That is a state that we want to break out of. And getting fed up with yourself is like, okay, how much is this even benefiting me? Do I want a bigger and better life? Or do I want to stay stuck in the nest, the bitter nest?
The bitterness. Yes.
And that's where you need to like, I love a good pep talk. I love to talk myself. I love to be like, okay, and this is good. You did your thing, and it's time to get up.
Yeah. So
It's time
good.
to reposture. It's time. And, we can do that through our bodies too. It's like we can hold ourselves when we're in that bitterness. It's like this, we're talking bitterness, of course, we're both projectors, but we're in this sinking, collapsed energy where you're the victim, you're weak. Everything happened to you. And it's like, maybe, but that's over. 6 months later, 7 months, a year later, I can't do this anymore because it's sucking me dry. And so I need a pep talk. I need to move up and out of this. And then as I rise back up, more emotions will come up, but I can move through them without being stuck in them.
So good. Oh, I love that. I have one more scenario that I want to talk through with you. This is a scenario where, let's say someone had a breakup. It was 2 or 3 months ago, and they've been, you know, quote unquote, trying to change their mindset about the breakup, about their life, all of that, but they are still just in like maybe like a mood. I don't even want to call out one emotion because it's like a flavor of a lot of different emotions: hopelessness, discouraged, probably more resentment. But they've spent like 2 or 3 months in that and they've been, quote unquote, trying to get out of it. What would you say? Is that a feel your feelings or change your perspective or a flavor of both?
So they're stuck in a state.
Hmm.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, like a mood.
Yeah. So if anyone listening has ever been in that, I know I have, where I just experienced this like a week ago. So I will walk you through exactly what I recommend. I literally just talked to another client about this. I was like, here's your protocol when you're in a state that you're wanting to break out of. Does that sound good?
This is perfect. You're on the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast. We are all about next steps and how to's here. So, any next steps and how to's that you can give us, we are all ears, sister.
Okay, so your protocol when you're in a funk and you want to get out of it. I deeply understand the feeling of being in this state and this funk of like, it feels terrible. And when you have someone at that point saying, okay, put on a playlist and dance, you're like, I hate you. Yeah. It does not feel good. So don't do that to yourself. So step one is always, in my mind, retreat and experience. So it's okay to pull away. I have the guest room in my house is like my healing room where I was calling it my sick room, but it's my healing room. So if I'm feeling low, if I'm not feeling right, I go into that room and I pull away. So step one is actually to retreat and let it all come up. Feel bad for yourself. Let the thoughts that are really dragging you down, let them surface and let the emotion that that triggers come through. Because that's just allowing it to be. So I guess step one is actually allow. And I like to retreat when I allow, because what will often happen is if you're trying to talk at this state through with someone, if you're trying to talk it through, they're going to want to help you out of it because they're uncomfortable with your emotion. So they want to help you out of your emotion, but it's not time for that yet. So allow it to be. Then the next step is if you need to go deeper into it, I have a bunch of emotional clearing audios that I like to use. Or you can use this simple process called stop, look, and listen, which really quickly, like you stop, you literally pause because you're going to want to do to distract yourself from the emotion and the state that you're in. So stop, look into the body. You're like, where is this showing up in my body? When I think this thought that's keeping me in this state, what does it trigger in my body? Go into the body and then listen, start to breathe. What does it feel like? Like, what does it have to say? What information? And just those 3 steps, even if you don't get an entire release, those 3 steps are going to move something in the body because instead of avoiding, you're allowing. So those are the step one is allow, step two is stop, look, and listen. Then once you've moved through some of the emotion, like already something's moving. And again, this could take 10 minutes, or this can be something that you're, depending on the depth of it, that you're pacing out over a couple of weeks. That's okay. We're not here to like, we're operating on body's time, not mind's time here. Body's a lot slower than the mind. So then I like to keep a list personally of things that feel good, a feel good list. So when I'm in a state, after I've done steps 1 and 2, then I look at the list and I'm like, okay, what's going to feel good? A walk, laying out in the sun, calling someone to talk through, cooking a meal, cleaning my space. Like I have certain things that help move me out of my state. One is shaking, especially if I'm angry. I like to like stomp and shake and just like move things out. Dancing's not on that list for me. I'm dancing like at the edge of joy into bliss. That's when the dancing happens. Anything before that, I'm sorry, I am not dancing. So just know and recognize what feels good to you. I think a lot of things that are like, this is the time, step 3 is like tending. So what have I been neglecting? Because a lot of times when we're stuck in a state, we neglect, like we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not feeding ourselves, we're not drinking water, we're not showering, we're not moving. So what does the tending look and feel like? And how is that going to support you? And then the final step of that is the momentum. Because if you can get yourself to start tending to yourself, that's again that bit of a perspective shift of like, oh, I matter. Oh, there's something in here for me. It's when you're in that state, especially with breakups, all of the energy and attention is outward. That's so tiring. So it's like you're thinking about the other person, you're thinking about what they're doing, and it's like you totally forget you exist. And so by redirecting that energy and then tending into yourself, you start to build that momentum forward toward what you're desiring. And that's the time then you step in with goals, with mindset work, with thought work. And it's like, okay, what can hold this for me so I can keep this forward momentum because that state was no longer serving.
Beautiful. Obsessed. I took notes, y'all, because I thought that was great. So you have now shown us in the time that we've been on our podcast recording here, Dana has now, this is for all of us, brave hearts listening in. Dana has shown us when to feel our feelings versus when to change perspective, has outlined that, right? you have also shown us how to feel the feeling. So, like your strategy towards feeling your feelings, one of them, she's got many of them, but one of them that you could implement today is the stop, look, and listen that she just outlined. Then, if you have been in a mood or a funk for weeks, months, maybe years, okay, you can follow her 4-step process where she outlined becoming aware, feeling your feeling, the stop, look, and listen, right? Tending to yourself, your feel good list. What does tending to yourself look like? And then using that momentum, you said that's where the perspective change shift happens of like, I matter. So important. I did a whole podcast episode actually about when I believed I didn't matter. Like I was it created such like a deep depression for me that I was like, I don't even, and so like that perspective shift alone does so much of like, I actually matter. So tending to yourself, using that momentum. And you said that's where goals and mindset work come into. That is beautiful. And that is so perfect for anyone who's going through a breakup, who is moving through that journey of heartbreak. My next question is those tools, everything you just outlined, do you feel like that can also be applied to your bigger and better life? Because I don't just teach people how to get over their ex, we also dive into, building the bigger and better life, a life that the life that you thought you had or wanted with your ex is not isolated to only if that ex is in your life or not. My goal is to help people build that life regardless of who's in their life. And of course, that doesn't mean that their life is perfect 100% of the time or that they don't have the 50-50 experience or that they feel good all of the time. They're absolutely going to have lower moments or that bottom part of the wave. So I'm curious, can they use all of those tools that you just shared with us in the same way? Or do you think there's something different that we need to keep in mind that wouldn't be applicable or would be applicable to the bigger and better life?
So, yes to using all of the tools.
Mhm.
And I think what happens when people start to feel good again, especially coming out of a difficult experience, is they there's two things. One is they don't want to feel that way again. So as you're kind of on the up and up, there is a subtle avoidance to anything that's not on the up and up. And I'll come back to that. And then the second thing is they are, how do I say this? Like they're afraid that if they feel low while they're on the up and up, that it's going to take away their progress. And so I have renamed like highs and lows. Well, actually, highs and lows are really how I talk about it instead of like bad and good. So, one of the simplest things you can do as you're moving out of something heavy, and you'll note, like if you listen back to this podcast, it's so conditioned in me how I talk about emotions now. I rarely even say like depressed or sad, or it's like heavy, low. I like to say slow and low and high and fly. They all are required. And so when you're not in it, the value is as you're moving forward and out that you're going to dip and rise on the way. And every dip is not a backwards step. And in fact, a lot of times I see this a lot. I've had this in my own life of when things are going really well, that's when I can get really tripped up with emotions. Because when you're feeling bad, you're like, bring it on. What's another bad feeling, right? Bad. What's another bad feeling? But when you're feeling good, it can be really disruptive and alarming to the mind to have a dip. And so the most beautiful thing you can do is to learn to embrace the slow and low times. And I like to think of it of our dear friend nature of the harvest season, right? So we have summer, or if like if you're a woman and you have your cycles, your menstrual cycle throughout that, but we have summer, you might be high and fly, you have energy, you're outward, you're excited, everything feels great. And so many people are afraid to leave that state, but that is not sustainable. it is not actually even what we're meant to be in all the time. We're not meant to be happy all the time. I know you talk about the 50-50, and that's great. It's like we need all of the emotions to anchor us into this life. So then we go into the fall where it's like some tending and some cleanup and some buttoning up. Maybe you're feeling really productive. Then you go into the winter where it's like retreat, slow down. The seeds are planted. You don't see anything on the top, but guess what? Without that winter, that dark time, their roots can't grow deep. Think about your energy of you're here. Your natural state is easeful, calm, peace. This like it's like this elevated neutral. It's just floating, like if you've ever been in a float tank. It's a really beautiful experience. And then we get to play with all of these emotions above and below that state. Those are just playgrounds to visit. And you play in them and then you come back. And you play in them and you come back. And every time you go through a full emotional experience, whether it's a high or a low, you come back to neutral. This is the best thing for the mind to learn. You're not always seeking the high ground. You're seeking the ease, the relief that comes on the other side of the emotion. And then to continue out, so like we're neutral and then we go inward. So we have to root in order to rise. So from the neutral space, we have rising emotions and we have rooting emotions. And so when you're in the winter phase, whether it's a day, a week, a month, a season, it is time to root, to go inward, to slow down. Your energy is still busy. It's just directed inward instead of outward. And then every time we have winter, spring always comes. And then you start to sprout. You get clarity, you get insights. You release the schluff of the winter. And so remember your emotions. There's not one best, right, highest emotion. They're all valuable, they're all useful, and they're all just part of our own growing experience. And at the end of the day, we're always going to end back in that neutral, calm, peaceful state. And that's the place. But in order to get to that state, y'all, this is the best part of it. You don't get to that state without the emotions. Because if you're not feeling your emotions, the state that you're in that mimics the peaceful calm is numb. And that's where I'm fine. I don't feel high, I don't feel low. I'm just fine. I'm probably anxious, but that's like the in between. So know that the emotions are the most valuable thing that you can have because they're what's going to bring you into that peaceful state. And that's where your inner voice lives. That's where that clarity lives. That's where flow of life happens as well.
And so much comes through when you release emotion, my friends. Like, I think that's like one of my biggest takeaways when I'm clearing emotion, working through and processing emotion is there's always clarity on the other side. There's always some sort of lesson on the other side or like nugget of wisdom. And I think that is what Dana's saying is that the inner voice comes through, which is always that lesson or that nugget of wisdom of and clarity, like a message comes through that makes so much sense. And
The
that,
insight.
mhm. And that is also the perspective change, which is so beautiful. Like when we're doing thought work, it's helpful because once you've not pushed, when you've moved through that emotion or released that emotion or wiggled it loose and, fluffed it up and like it's dissipated, there is a new perspective and you didn't force or manipulate yourself into a new belief. You effortlessly moved through and into a new belief, which is just very different. And that's the difference that I see between my like clients who are really like efforting and trying to thought work their way out of something, when in reality, if they would like move through the emotion and allow themselves to release the emotion, the wisdom comes through on the other side. And there's nothing wrong with like trying and efforting your way there. I just want to say that. But one of actually, now that I'm speaking about this is a little off topic, so I don't mean to go completely off topic here, but something that has worked really well for a recent client of mine is really looking at beliefs that she already believes. Like, what are the beliefs that she can already stand true in that bring her closer to where she wants to be? And so, again, using like, walk through the emotion, build awareness around the emotion, get curious about the emotion, But then instead of trying to like believe something that she doesn't believe, it's moving into a belief that she already believes in and has truth in, that she can ground in enough to move her in the direction she's going. But
Yeah, that will build the momentum.
yeah, exactly.
Because I'm glad you said this force and manipulating. You said that so well. But I had written down resistance. And I think that's a really it's really valuable to notice where you hold resistance in your body. And someone could have a lot of resistance to a new belief, which is where it's good to kind of build into something like a bridge belief or something that's already believable. But where I see a lot of resistance is people would rather force and manipulate and try to corral the mind and force the mind into a form that it's not ready to be in. They would rather put all their energy again in direction outward, right? And into the head than inward and slowing down and into the body, which often can feel like a slower, more uncomfortable process. But it's like slow is smooth, smooth is fast, slow down to speed up. If we can take that time, if your resistance is on the emotional side, if you can take that time to slow down and to get into it, it's going to speed up the mental side because, like Dorothy said, you get when these insights click in, like when they click in from within, it's not the same as your mind telling your mind something. It's like it's truth. And it drops in and it's like, whoa. And those type of things can radically alter how you feel, how you show up in the world, and what you believe. And it's not always instant, right? There can be resistance to the insight, but just know that sometimes the fastest way is to slow down and to look at where am I holding the most resistance, and that's actually the direction I need to move into to move forward instead of just working so hard, uh, like swimming upstream analogy. It's like, what if I can, instead of be in resistance, what if I can be in flow? What if instead of forcing and manipulating myself to believe something, I can trust my own knowing?
Yeah, it's like the capital K knowing that you talk about. Like the capital K knowing drops in. And trust me, when we're talking about this, for all of you listening, this was me. Like, I very much love the mind and I love manipulating and forcing the mind to believe the things that I want to believe to get the result that I want to have. And so I'm all for it. It works. That's like one method. And I've just recognized over the past year, like a releasing and a unattaching, like that has to happen. And it's so fun when it comes from the inner voice. Well, it's typically more fun when it comes from the inner voice. And when it comes through, I think when I talk about this idea of like getting over your ex in a moment, it happens in a moment. It comes from the capital K knowing the truth dropping in versus the forcing yourself to believe something you don't believe. And I
It's
think,
like affirmations, right? If I'm staring in the mirror and hating my body and saying, I love my body, right? That's going to take a lot more effort than if all of a sudden I drop in and I'm like, can I see my body in a different way? Like, what's the fear around my body? And when I look at the fear and the emotion or that, and then I drop in and I'm like, but look at everything it does. Look at all the functions. All of a sudden, that compassion for my body is not a belief. It's like, it's just, oh, I see my body differently. And that's what I'm hearing you talk about, like with that moment.
yep. Yeah. And I think the resistance, I'm glad that you brought up the resistance piece of it because I personally, in my journey towards all of this, I felt a lot of resistance to being in my body, not because I hate my body. Like, I think I have great opinions and thoughts and beliefs about my body, but it was more of just like this slowing, like I have to slow down to like feel my feelings. And then the questions people would ask me, including Dana, which I don't mean this in like a bad way, but like, right. They're like asking me to be like, so what does that feel like in your body? And I'm just like, bitch, what? I don't
Why does
fucking
it
know.
matter?
Like,
Why does it
yeah.
matter? God, I don't have
And then
time for
when you
this.
and then when you have me talking about like it's in my throat, is it moving? I don't know. Like, really, is this where we're going? Is this what we're doing? Like, I that was me. And so I want to say that for everyone listening, because if that's you, that's okay. And I just, what if you just tried it on for a day and see how it went? See how, like, the worst case scenario, you end up where you are now and you continue to use the tools you're using now. But best case scenario, you'll learn a new method that actually helps you like slide into something instead of force yourself into something. Um,
We'd
but
rather slide in.
yeah, yeah, I have so many visuals with that. I didn't mean it in that way, but here we are. Okay. So, long story short, loved everything that you had to share, Dana. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that they know about, hear about? I do want to make sure that they know where to find you. They want to
I
work
want
with
to
you.
ask you, I think it's really helpful, like you said, for people to we've both, I mean, I've been in that place too where there's a lot of resistance to the emotion. I still am in that. I'm like, I don't want to. Like I was up in the other night, my brain was feeling anxious and thinking not useful things, and I just wanted to lay there and be anxious. Like
Mm.
it's so weird how the mind is really comfortable in the uncomfortable states. But I it was twofold. I had to kick my mind's butt. I said, "You have to practice what you preach, Dana." This is like pep talk. And I'm like, "Fine." Right? So it's like and so then I did some somatic practices and it legit just like brought me into my body and I felt so much better. And then I fell asleep and like it works. It really works. We think that the best way out is to think our way out of a feeling. But that is not the case. It is not the mind's job to process emotion, it is the body's job. So, whenever it comes to a feeling and an emotion, like the mind is always going to be the one that wants to do the work because it's like, I've got this, I'm the driver, I'm in control. But it is not the mind's job to process an emotion, it is the body's job. So, we take what's coming from the mind and we send it in and down. And we let the body do what it knows how to inherently do. We don't even need to teach it. We just need to be present and be in it and to be willing to feel it. And that can be as fast as like an average emotion, like a quick one, it's like 90 seconds. And so the fear and the resistance, I always tell people like, give yourself a minute. So there's, okay, mind. Let's do it for 1 minute, mind. And more often than not, if we can get through that resistance by saying it's just going to be 1 minute, then you're in it. And then you're in your body. And then things start to become a lot more clear and a lot easier. And like you said, it's a low risk for a lot of this. Now, just remember, um, for bigger griefs, bigger traumas, a lot of that pain happens in isolation and the healing happens in connection. And so remember that we're giving you the tools to do this on your own. And I especially recommend you do this with the small things, with the upsets, with the little triggers, with the things that happen during your day, and recognize that is not something you have to do by yourself. It is not something you have to do in solitude. You can, but with the bigger things, the healing really does happen in connection because that's so much of the rupture, so much of the pain that we end up in is because we felt isolated and we felt shut down and we felt like we couldn't express and share. And so it's a really beautiful thing when you're on this emotional journey, like the Get Over Your Ex program, is to actually allow yourself to be seen, to be heard, to be witnessed, to be in community, whether that's a one-to-one person or a group or just doing something with a collective, it can be really valuable, even though it can be deeply uncomfortable. Like you don't have to be alone to solve this, and it's not your mind's job to solve it. It's your body's job to resolve it.
Yes, just because we can self-regulate doesn't mean that we are meant to self-regulate.
Yeah,
And so you're,
co-regulation's so much more fun.
yes, it's so much more fun and it's more our bodies and our primitive minds were meant to co-regulate.
Yeah.
100%. And then emotions are not problems to be solved, but experiences to be had.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
so
then my
much.
last question for you, Dorothy, if you were to talk to your people too, is like, what do you think is the hardest and also the easiest part now that you've been doing emotional work for so long? Like, what's the biggest challenge you come across? And then what's the part that makes it all worth it and easy?
That's a really great question. I think still to me, the hardest part is dropping in, making this space to able to be dropping in. So like literally Dana and I are doing one-on-one work together right now and we communicate via Voxer together and I'm about to have a baby in like 3 to 4 weeks ish. I mean, it could be really any time. Um, and so we're working on something today, and I have had a hard time. I've still had resistance to dropping in and answering the questions that she wants me to drop in and ask my inner voice because I know feeling is going to have to like come up for me to even get to my inner voice to answer these questions. And the brain and the mind feels like we've got all these other things that we need to do and focus on that we can't slow down enough to do this. But then yet I'm doing all of these things with disgruntlement or, with the low part of the emotional wave. Eh, Whereas I could just pause for literally like 10 minutes, feel my feelings, move through emotion, answer these questions, and then in 10 to 20 minutes be in a completely different headspace and then navigate and migrate through my day. So I think that's the hardest part. My favorite part, or the part that makes it all worth it, is when I feel like when I finally notice. I felt this at the end of last month. At the end of August, I realized I had gotten into a practice of feeling my feelings every single day, releasing emotion every single day, making it a priority. And when I say every single day, I should let you know there's the caveat of it's like 4 to 5 times. I don't count my weekends as days. I'm
Same,
like, if I
same.
do something during the week, it's like good. Weekend, I don't know.
Yep.
So 4 to 5 times a week, I was processing and feeling feelings, and I made it a priority to do so. And at the end of the month, I was like, holy moly, I feel light. I feel energetic. I feel open. I feel like there are no problems in this world. And what I've noticed, I've like let these emotions build up again. Now we're in mid-September as we're recording this, and I feel clogged again. I feel like there's dirt in the tube and the piping. Like there's gunk in the piping, and I can't get a clear read on my inner voice right now because I've like let the stuff build up. So I do want to say too that the lesson there for me is I love doing this regularly and not letting it build up because once you let it build up, then it does take more I suppose time or practice of getting like the residue gone instead of just like rinsing every single day, kind of like brushing your teeth or something like that.
That I just used this analogy. Was it with your group or on my podcast? I don't remember, but it was like the flossing analogy. So this
Mm.
is like, well, I was talking about my audio program, but I'm like, this is like regular flossing. And we all hate that experience. If you go to the dentist, I go every 6 months. I know some people don't go that often, but like if you go to the dentist every 6 months and you have not flossed and you have not been taking care of your teeth, and it is the worst experience, and they're scraping and it's uncomfortable, and you have sensitive teeth and they shame you. It's like people don't like the dentist for that reason. And if I have come home from a dentist appointment like that, I am so motivated to floss regularly because I'm like, I don't want to go through that again. And our emotions are just the same. It's like we want that regular emotional hygiene process. Like at first, it's a little difficult to do. You need the first cleanup, right? You need that first appointment with the dentist to clear out. So, the dentist, I'm the dentist in this case. But we need to have like the deep cleaning, and that might take a little bit of time. But then once you've done that, you're so right, Dorothy. Like it is so much easier to maintain, just to floss every day, to brush every day, to make your own mouthwash, to do whatever you do to keep it up. And then the interesting thing, I don't know if you have felt this, I definitely have, especially recently, is like, and it happens with flossing. Like when I'm flossing regularly, then I like start to crave the flossing. And it no longer feels good to go 2, 3, 4, 5 days without flossing. It's like my gums are like asking for it. And I feel the same with my body. Like if I'm not dropping in and doing that little 10 to 20 minute clean out in the day, my body's like, hey, can we have some of this? Because we know how good it is. Our bodies are so wise, they know what's good for you.
So good. I love that. Absolutely. It's like that nudge, like if you get into working out and then you're like, oh, I haven't moved my body today, and like you can feel it.
Yes.
hmm
Yeah, that's an easier analogy.
So good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dana. I appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for coming on. The Bravehearts I know listening are so grateful for you. Where can they come find you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, check out my Instagram at Dana_Evans. That's probably the easiest place. Definitely check out the audio course. It's like an introduction. It's like your emotional flossing, your emotional hygiene. It's 14 days, and every day you get to practice dropping in, and it's paired with teachings. And so
Yeah.
I'm so excited to offer that because it just gives you a taste of what this work is and what it really feels like to shift. So Instagram and that program. And then, of course, my podcast, the Tuning In podcast, where we deep dive into emotions and inner voice and just how it looks to do this work, experience this every single day.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much, Dana.
Thank you. Oh, and we're gonna work on your drop in right now. So everyone, don't
Yes.
worry, Dorothy's gonna get in and she's gonna get her release too.
Yes. I'm doing it today, y'all.
Thank you.
If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.